The night skies of Lunara were never silent. Twin moons drifted across silver clouds and the stars sparkled like diamonds scattered on dark silk. The Lunari people once looked at the heavens with peace in their hearts. For centuries they believed the universe was gentle, a home where life was meant to grow in harmony. But that was before the Draxian Empire came. The Draxian were not dreamers. They were conquerors. They came with fire, with iron, with fleets that darkened suns. Their warships swept across Lunari skies, burning cities and stealing away survivors. Entire valleys were turned to ash and rivers ran black with smoke. The Lunari were not weak by choice. They were builders, healers, thinkers. Their cities rose on crystal towers and their people dedicated themselves to study, music, and art. Their weapons were few and old, kept only for tradition. Against the Draxian, they were like children standing before a storm. The Council of Elders gathered in the Hall of Light, a great dome that shone like pearl above the capital city. But even this hall shook from distant thunder, explosions in the outer provinces. Their voices trembled as they spoke, their tall, slender forms bent with despair. "We cannot fight them," said Elder Sale, his long hands gripping the council table. "Our fleets are gone, our soldiers captured. We are scattered shadows." Another elder, Mira, lifted her voice. "There is one chance." The beacon, the chamber grew quiet. The beacon was ancient, a relic from the first builders. It was said to send a message across the stars, farther than any Lunari vessel had ever traveled. It was used only once before in the time of the first dawn and never again. Some believed it no longer worked. Others feared it might draw danger instead of help. "Who will answer?" another asked. "Who among the stars would listen to our cries?" But Mira's voice was steady. "It does not matter who hears. If we stay silent, we are lost. If we call out, there is hope, however small." Debate raged, but in the end despair gave way to courage. The elders agreed. The beacon would be lit. That night, beneath the shattered sky, the Lunari gathered at the crystal spire where the beacon rested. It was a towering construct, carved of stone older than memory, etched with glowing veins of light. Pilgrims had walked past it for centuries, never daring to touch. Now priests and engineers worked together, breathing life into its silent core. A hum filled the air. The ground trembled as currents of energy climbed the spire. The people of Lunara knelt in silence as the beacon awakened, casting beams of white fire upward, piercing clouds, piercing the sky, piercing the very fabric of space. Mira stepped forward. She was chosen to speak. Her voice trembled at first, but then grew firm. "To any who hear us, we are the Lunari. Our world is dying. The Draxian Empire destroys us without mercy. We beg you, if you hold kindness in your heart, and save us. Show us mercy." The beacon carried her words across the void, beyond suns, beyond dust, into the deep and endless sea of stars. When the light faded, the people stood waiting. Some wept, some prayed. Others simply stared at the sky, wondering if anyone, anywhere, had heard them. For many days there was nothing. The Draxian continued their raids, though the capital still stood. Hope thinned like smoke in the wind. Children asked their parents if help was coming, and the parents had no answers. But far beyond Lunara, across thousands of light years, on a small blue world called Earth, the signal was caught. Earth was not like Lunara. It was a place of storms and predators, earthquakes and volcanoes, deserts and floods. Its people were shaped by struggle. They fought for food, for land, for survival. And from that struggle they learned courage, adaptation, and defiance. When Earth's colonies picked up the Lunari message, debate erupted. Some said it was too far, too risky. Others argued it was not their problem. But among Earth's people, there was also a spirit that could not ignore a plea for help. A fleet could not be spared. But one warship was sent, the Resolute, crewed by veterans who had survived battles on worlds even harsher than Earth. They did not call themselves saviors. They called themselves survivors. Weeks later on Lunara, the skies lit again, not with Draxian fire, but with the burning streak of an arriving vessel. The people panicked at first, fearing another enemy had come. But the ship bore no Draxian symbol. It was small compared to the Empire's massive carriers, yet it landed with purpose outside the capital. The Lunari gathered in cautious silence as the ramp descended. From the shadow of the ship stepped figures unlike any they had seen before. Their bodies were shorter, heavier, built for endurance rather than grace. Their faces were marked by weather, their eyes sharp, their movements unafraid. These were the humans of Earth. Elder Mira stepped forward, trembling. "You heard us?" she asked in disbelief. The human commander nodded. His voice was calm, steady. "We heard your call. We are not angels. We are not gods, but we are here." The Lunari looked at one another, unsure. These beings did not shine with power. They carried weapons, yes, but their ship was small, their number few. How could they stand against the empire that had crushed them? Mira spoke again softly. You will show us mercy?" The commander's eyes were firm. "We do not bring mercy. We bring survival. If you want to live, stand with us." The Lunari could not yet understand what those words meant, but in their hearts a spark stirred, something they had almost forgotten. Hope. Far above, in the dark reaches of space, the Draxian fleets prepared their next strike. They did not yet know that the plea for mercy had been answered. They did not yet know that Deathworlders had arrived. The Lunari had expected saviors bathed in light, warriors of legend, or perhaps some divine force that could sweep away the Draxian Empire with a single gesture. Instead, they saw humans, solid, scarred, and ordinary-looking to their delicate eyes. The Lunari whispered among themselves as the human soldiers walked down the ramp of their ship. Their uniforms were practical, worn but strong, their boots thick with dust from countless worlds. They did not move with the slow grace of Lunari, but with firm, heavy steps that echoed with confidence. Elder Mira, who had spoken through the beacon, studied them closely. Her people were tall, slim, and pale, their skin almost glowing under the twin moons. These newcomers looked tougher, darker as though carved by storms. Mira noticed scars across the commander's hands. The Lunari healed their wounds quickly, leaving little trace. Humans carried their wounds as history. The commander raised his hand in greeting. "I am Captain Elias of Earth's Resolute. We come as allies." Mira bowed her head lightly, though her heart remained uncertain. "We thank you, Captain Elias. We feared no one would answer our call." The captain glanced around at the frightened faces, at the broken buildings near the city's edge, and at the sky that still smoked from past battles. His eyes hardened. "We heard you. But understand this, Earth is not a world of mercy. We are a world of survival. If you wish to live, you must learn to fight as we fight." His words unsettled the Lunari. Many of them believed peace was the only way to live. War was something old and shameful. To become like the Draxian seemed unthinkable. Yet at the same time, the Lunari knew they had no choice. Without help, they would vanish. The humans wasted no time. That very night, Captain Elias ordered his squad to inspect the defenses of the capital. They walked the perimeter walls, studied the abandoned gun turrets, and tested the ancient shields that flickered weakly above the city. Elias shook his head. "These defenses will fall in the next raid. We must prepare." Mira followed him, troubled. "But our people cannot fight as you do. We are not made for war." Elias looked at her directly. "You are alive. That is enough. Survival does not belong to the strongest body, but to the strongest will. If you stand, you can learn. If you refuse, you are already lost." The next day, the Lunari watched in amazement as the humans demonstrated their weapons. The rifles spat fire with precision. The grenades shook the ground, and the heavy armor they wore turned aside blows that would shatter Lunari bones. But more than the weapons, it was the way the humans moved that unsettled and impressed them. They fought as a unit, covering each other, trusting each other, never leaving anyone behind. They moved quickly but with care, as if every step had meaning. Their discipline was unlike anything the Lunari had seen. Some Lunari whispered in awe. Others shivered in fear. Could these fierce strangers truly be their salvation? When the sun fell, the humans gathered the Lunari volunteers, those brave enough to step forward. The group was small, mostly young men and women, nervous but determined. Elias looked at them and nodded. "You wish to live, good. Then you will train." Training was harsh. The Lunari stumbled, fell, and failed again and again. Their bodies were not as strong as humans, their reflexes slower. But the humans did not mock them. They corrected, encouraged, and pushed them. Slowly, the Lunari began to stand longer, run farther, and hold their weapons steadier. It was not enough time. The Draxian did not wait. One evening, alarms blared across the capital. Dark shapes appeared in the sky, raiding ships descending like vultures. The people screamed and rushed for cover. Soldiers of the Empire poured from the ships, tall and armored, their weapons glowing with deadly fire. Mira and the elders gathered on the city wall, terror gripping their hearts. They had seen this before, raids that ended in flames, in capture, and despair. But this time humans stood ready. Captain Elias barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. Positions. Hold the line. Remember, survive! The Lunari volunteers trembled but followed. They took their places beside human soldiers. The battle began. The Draxian charged with their usual confidence, expecting another easy victory. But as they advanced, hidden mines exploded beneath their feet. Snipers picked them off from rooftops. Barricades of stone and metal forced them into narrow alleys where ambushes awaited. The humans fought not with sheer power, but with cunning. They knew they were few, so they turned the city itself into a weapon. Every corner hid danger. Every shadow held resistance. The Lunari volunteers fired their weapons clumsily at first, but under human guidance, their fear turned to determination. They saw their teachers stand unshaken, and something inside them shifted. They began to believe. Elder Mira watched from the wall, her heart pounding. For the first time, she saw the Draxian falter. They were not retreating yet, but their advance slowed. Their perfect confidence cracked. The commander of the raiders roared in anger, ordering a final push. The Draxian surged forward. At that moment, Captain Elias gave the order. Now! From hidden tunnels beneath the city, explosives detonated, collapsing the ground beneath the enemy. Dozens of Draxian fell into pits of fire and rubble. Panic spread among their ranks. And then it happened. The Draxian, who had never known defeat on Lunara, pulled back. Their ships rose, engines roaring, and fled into the sky. Silence fell. The people of Lunara stood frozen. Then slowly cheers began to rise. For the first time in memory, the Draxian had been forced to retreat. Mira's eyes filled with tears. She turned to Elias, who stood calm, his weapon still in hand. "You did it," she whispered. Elias shook his head. "No, we did it. You stood with us. That is only the beginning." The people gathered, staring at the humans with new eyes. They were not angels, not gods, but perhaps they were something better. They were survivors who could teach survival. And far away aboard their flagship, the Draxian commanders raged. Their pride was wounded, their power challenged. They swore vengeance. Next time they would not send raiders. They would send an army. The Lunari did not know it yet, but the greatest trial was still to come. And the humans, though few, were ready, for they were Deathworlders and they had never feared impossible odds. The city of Lunara was quiet after the battle. Fires were put out, the wounded were carried to healers, and the people whispered to each other with both fear and amazement. For the first time in living memory, the Draxian had been driven away. But the victory felt fragile, like glass that could shatter at the slightest touch. In the council hall, the elders met again. They sat around the long crystal table, their faces pale with worry. Elder Sale spoke first, his voice heavy. "We survived this day, but the Draxian will not forget. They will return, and next time their numbers will be greater." Elder Mira, who had stood with the humans from the beginning, answered calmly, "Yes, and that is why we must prepare. We cannot hide behind hope. We must learn, and we must change." Some elders shook their heads. "Change to become like them? To hold weapons and bring blood upon our hands?" one asked. "We are Lunari. We are makers of harmony. War is not our way." Mira's voice grew sharp. "And has harmony saved us from fire? Has our peace stopped the Empire from taking our children? If we do not stand, we will be nothing but dust and memory." The argument grew heated. Many Lunari feared that by following humans they were stepping onto the same path of violence that had destroyed other civilizations. But others looked to the night sky and remembered the retreat of the enemy. For the first time, the Empire had been wounded. That wound was made by human hands, and by Lunari hands that chose to fight beside them. Captain Elias entered the hall then, his boots echoing against the polished floor. He stood firm, his presence quiet but strong. "You must decide," he told them. "If you wish to remain as you were, then the Draxian will finish what they began. If you wish to live, then learn what we can teach. The choice is yours." The council fell silent. Some elders lowered their heads in shame. Others stared at Elias with mistrust. But Mira rose and placed her hand on the table. "I choose survival, and I believe our people will follow." That was the moment the Lunari began to change. Training spread through the city. At first, only the young and the desperate joined, but soon others followed. Farmers, scholars, healers. They trained in secret fields and abandoned halls, guided by human soldiers. The training was harsh. Humans pushed them to climb higher, run farther, hold their weapons steady even when fear shook their hands. The Lunari complained, stumbled, and sometimes cried out in exhaustion. But slowly something inside them hardened. They began to see themselves not only as victims but as fighters who could protect their families. The humans taught more than weapons. They taught survival. You must always have more than one plan, said Elias during a lesson. The Draxian are stronger. They are larger. They will not fight fair, so you must use every shadow, every stone, every trick the world gives you. The Lunari listened wide-eyed. To them, such thinking was strange. They had always fought with honor in the old days, never hiding, never striking from cover. But when they saw how the humans lived, when they heard stories of Earth with its storms, beasts, and endless struggles, they understood. For humans, survival was not dishonor. It was life. Yet not all Lunari welcomed the change. Some groups whispered that the humans were corrupting their people. A few even argued that surrender to the Empire might be better than losing their souls in battle. Mira often stood against these voices, but she felt the weight of doubt pressing on her shoulders. One evening, she walked along the edge of the training ground and saw two human soldiers tending to their wounded comrade. The man's arm was bleeding from a training accident, yet he laughed as his friends wrapped the wound. "You'll be fine," one of them said. "We've seen worse. You'll fight again tomorrow." Mira watched with wonder. The Lunari healed with medicine and light, but they rarely comforted each other with such warmth. She realized then what made humans strong. It was not only their bodies, but their bond. They never abandoned one another. She carried that thought back to the council. "Strength is not cruelty," she told them. "Strength is standing for each other. The humans do not fight because they love war. They fight because they love life. We must learn this lesson." While Lunara trained, the Draxians seethed. On their flagship, Commander Vaynar struck the table with his fist. "Defeated by a handful of outworlders and weaklings? This shame cannot stand. We will crush them." Reports came in from scouts. The humans were few, their ship small. The Lunari were weak, barely learning to fight. Vaynar smiled cruelly. "Then we will send a fleet. We will show them the Empire's true strength. Burn their city, break their hope, and drag their leaders in chains." Across the Empire, ships gathered, more than had ever been sent against Lunara before. Back on Lunara, Elias stood on a balcony with Mira, watching the volunteers train. He saw their slow but steady progress. He also saw their fear. "They are not ready," he said quietly. Mira looked at him with worry. "Then what will happen when the Empire comes again?" Elias tightened his jaw. "They will come. And when they do, we will hold as long as we can. But the cost will be heavy." Mira shivered. "You speak of cost often, Captain. What do you mean?" He looked at her, his eyes hard but honest. "Mercy has a cost. Survival has a cost. We pay it with pain, with loss, with sacrifice. On Earth, every day was paid in cost. If you want freedom, you must be willing to pay as well." Mira lowered her gaze, her heart heavy. Yet she understood. Nothing could be won without giving something in return. The days passed quickly. Defenses were rebuilt, traps prepared, and supplies hidden in secret tunnels. Still, every night the Lunari looked to the stars with dread, knowing the Empire would not forgive. One night the alarms rang again. Scouts rushed into the capital with terror in their eyes. "They are coming!" they cried. Not raiders this time. A fleet. The people froze in fear. Mothers clutched their children, elders bowed their heads, and even some volunteers trembled. Elias gathered his soldiers and the Lunari leaders. His voice was calm, steady as stone. "The Draxian will come with all their power. They believe fear will break you. Do not let it. Stand, fight, and remember. You are no longer only victims. You are defenders of your world." Mira raised her voice, calling to her people. "We asked the stars for mercy. The stars sent us not angels but humans. They did not give us mercy. They gave us strength. Now we must use it." Her words lit sparks in frightened hearts. Slowly the people lifted their heads. The volunteers gripped their weapons tighter. Fear was still there, but behind it a new fire burned. Above, the night sky glowed with the arrival of the Draxian fleet. Dozens of ships filled the heavens, their engines like storms. The greatest battle of Lunara was about to begin. The campfire burned low that night. The human sat on a log looking at the flames while Leora stood a short distance away. She was silent, her eyes fixed on the stars above. The quiet stretched between them, broken only by the sound of insects and the crackling fire. Both had many thoughts, but neither knew how to begin. Finally, the human spoke. "You still don't trust me fully, do you?" Leora turned, her expression calm but firm. "Trust is not given quickly. You are human. You are from a world I was taught is dangerous. Yet you saved me twice. My people would call that honor." He gave a faint smile. "Honor doesn't mean much to me. I just did what felt right." She studied him, her sharp eyes narrowing. "That is why you confuse me. You act without demand for reward. You risked yourself when you could have left me. Why?" He shrugged, staring at the fire again. "Because no one deserves to be left alone in danger. Not even an alien princess." Her lips curved slightly, though she quickly hid it. Strange words for a human. The silence returned, but this time it was softer, easier to bear. Leora finally sat across from him. For the first time since they met, she let the weight of her armor rest on the ground beside her. That small gesture felt like a step forward. The next morning, they continued their journey toward the mountains. The air grew colder, the land harsher. Tall cliffs loomed in the distance, and strange birds circled overhead. Each step seemed heavier, yet they did not stop. They were bound now, not just by survival, but by something unspoken. As they walked, Leora asked, "Do all humans fight as you do? With courage, but also with recklessness?" He chuckled. "Not all. Many avoid fights when they can. But sometimes when it matters, humans fight harder than anyone expects. That is why many call us Deathworlders." She looked at him thoughtfully. "Deathworlders. I heard that name whispered in fear among my people. They say humans survive anything. Poison, storms, even hunger. That is why they fear you." "And you?" he asked gently. "Do you fear me?" Leora stopped walking. Her violet eyes met his, steady and strong. "I feared you at first. I thought you were dangerous, like the stories say. But now..." She hesitated, then spoke softly. "Now I see something else. You are dangerous, yes, but also kind. That is more dangerous than any weapon." The human did not answer. He simply kept walking, her words echoing in his mind. Later that day, they reached the base of the mountains. Jagged rocks stretched high into the sky, and the wind howled through the narrow paths. The way forward was not easy. Leora climbed with skill, her movements quick and sure. The human struggled more, but he pushed forward, refusing to fall behind. At one point, the path narrowed to a sharp ledge above a deep ravine. Leora crossed first, her balance perfect. The human followed, but halfway across, the stone beneath him crumbled. He slipped, his body swinging dangerously over the edge. "Hold on!" Leora shouted, rushing back. She grabbed his arm with surprising strength, pulling him up with all her might. For a moment, their faces were inches apart, breaths heavy. "You saved me this time," he said, voice low. She smirked faintly. "Now we are even." They continued upward, their bond growing with each step. At night, they rested in a small cave, sharing warmth against the cold air. The human offered her his cloak, and though she first refused, she later accepted quietly when she thought he had fallen asleep. In the days that followed, their path grew more dangerous. Strange creatures lived in the mountains with glowing eyes and sharp claws. One night, a pack of them attacked. The human stood in front, wielding only a sharp stick he had shaped into a spear. Leora fought beside him, her blade flashing in the moonlight. Together, they drove the creatures back. After the fight, both were bruised and tired. Yet when they looked at each other, there was no fear. Only respect. "You fight like one of my warriors," Leora said softly. "And you fight like 10 of mine," he replied with a grin. For the first time, she laughed, a sound sharp yet beautiful in the still night air. But not everything was laughter. One evening, as they neared the mountain's peak, Leora grew quiet. She looked at the horizon, where the sky glowed red with the setting sun. "My father once told me the mountains would test me," she whispered. "He said only those with true strength could pass through. I thought strength meant a sword and armor, but now I think it means something else." The human listened. "What do you think it means?" She turned to him, her gaze steady. "Strength is not only to fight, it is to trust, to let another stand beside you." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. He nodded slowly. "Then we'll pass this test together." That night, as they rested before the final climb, both were quiet but not distant. The firelight flickered on their faces, and though neither spoke, there was comfort in the silence. When dawn came, they began their last climb. The path was steep, the rocks sharp, but they did not falter. Each helped the other, pulling, guiding, never letting the other fall. At the very top, they stood together, looking out across the vast world below. Valleys, rivers, and forests stretched as far as the eye could see. The wind was cold, but the feeling between them was warm. Leora turned to him, her eyes filled with something new. "You are not like the humans I was taught to fear. You are different, perhaps. The stories are wrong." He smiled, his face tired but strong. "Or perhaps the stories are only half true. We are dangerous, yes, but we are also more than that." For a moment they stood side by side in silence, two beings from different worlds, yet bound by the journey they had shared. The mountains had tested them, and together they had endured. But as the wind grew stronger, Leora's expression changed. She looked beyond the horizon with worry. "The journey is not over. Danger still waits. My people, and yours. This world is not ready for peace." The human's smile faded, but his eyes were steady. "Then we'll face it, whatever comes, together." Her hand brushed against his just for a second before she pulled away quickly. But the meaning was clear. They were no longer just strangers forced to travel together. They were allies, perhaps even something more. As the sun rose higher, they began their descent on the other side of the mountain. The future was uncertain and the path ahead full of shadows. Yet neither felt alone anymore, and in that they found a strength greater than any sword or shield. The mountain behind them faded into the mist as they walked down into the wide valley. The air was warmer here, filled with the smell of flowers and the sound of running streams. But the peace did not fool them. Both the human and Leora knew danger still followed. They moved carefully, watching the land around them. The valley was beautiful, with tall green grass and trees glowing faintly in the sunlight, but hidden eyes seemed to watch from the shadows. Leora's hand often rested on her sword. The human kept his sharpened spear close. As they walked, Leora broke the silence. "Beyond this valley lies the border of my kingdom. My people wait there, but I do not know how they will see you." He gave a short laugh. "I'm used to strange looks. I don't expect them to welcome me." Her expression softened, but her voice was serious. "You saved me more than once. If they refuse to see that, then they are blind." The human shook his head. "People don't always see truth right away. Sometimes fear speaks louder." Her jaw tightened and she said no more. That night they rested near a small river. The water shone silver under the moon. Leora sat close to the fire, her sword across her knees. The human leaned back against a rock, looking at the stars. "Your stars are different from mine," he said softly. She looked up. "They tell stories here. Every star has a tale. My father used to sit with me and speak of warriors, queens, and ancient battles written in the sky." He smiled faintly. "Where I come from, people also tell stories about stars. Some say they guide us. Some say they are just faraway suns. But either way, they remind us we are small." Leora watched him quietly, then spoke. "You speak of smallness, yet you stand against danger without fear. That is not small." Their eyes met across the firelight. The silence between them was no longer heavy, but full of meaning neither dared put into words. The next day, as they drew closer to the borderlands, the signs of war became clear. Burned trees, broken weapons, and silent villages marked the land. The human felt unease settle in his chest. Leora walked slower, her eyes troubled. "This was once a strong place," she whispered. "Now it is only ashes. My people suffer. My father is gone. The council rules with fear. They will see you as an enemy." "Then what do you want me to do?" he asked. She stopped walking and looked at him with fierce eyes. "Stand with me. Even if they hate you, stand beside me. Together we may change their minds." He did not answer right away. Then with a slow nod he said, "I'll stand with you. Always." Those words gave her strength. By evening they reached the great gates of the kingdom. Tall walls rose high, guarded by armored warriors. The gates opened slowly, revealing a crowd of soldiers, nobles, and common folk. Murmurs filled the air as eyes fell on the strange pair. Leora walked forward proudly, her head held high. The human followed, calm but alert. An elder stepped forward, his robes heavy with golden thread. His voice was sharp. "Princess Leora, you return at last. But why do you bring this human?" The crowd whispered louder. Some faces showed fear, others anger. The human stood tall but did not speak. Leora's voice rang out strong and clear. "This human saved my life. Again and again, when death was near, he stood by me. Without him, I would not be here. Do not call him enemy. Call him ally, the elder frowned. Allies with a Deathworlder? Impossible. They are dangerous, untamed, full of chaos. The crowd seemed to agree. Voices rose, some shouting for the human to leave. Soldiers moved their hands toward weapons, but Leora raised her sword high and the crowd fell silent. Dangerous? Yes, he is dangerous, to those who bring harm. But so am I. Courage is not something to fear. It is something to respect. He is not chaos. He is strength. And he is my choice. Gasps echoed through the people. The elder's face turned pale. Your choice? Princess, you cannot mean— I mean every word, she said firmly. This human stood when others would run. He trusted me when I doubted him. If my people cannot see his worth, then they cannot see mine. The human stood silently, his heart heavy but proud. He had not asked for this, yet her words bound them together more than ever. The crowd grew restless. Some shouted in protest, others in support. The elder raised his hands to calm them, but the sound of horns cut through the air. From the hills beyond the gates, enemy riders appeared, carrying banners of fire and steel. A raiding force, fierce and swift, stormed toward the kingdom. The crowd screamed in fear, soldiers rushed to form lines. Leora looked at the human. This is the moment. Stand with me. He nodded once. Always. The gates opened again and Leora rode out on a white steed, her sword shining. The human followed on foot, spear in hand. Together they met the enemy head-on. The battle was fierce. Arrows darkened the sky, swords clashed, and cries of war filled the air. The human fought with raw strength, every strike powerful and sure. Leora moved with grace, her blade cutting like light through darkness. At one point, an enemy captain charged at Leora, his weapon raised. Before he could strike, the human leapt in front, blocking the blow with his spear. The wood cracked, but he held firm. With a shout, he struck back, and the captain fell. Leora's eyes met his in that moment, filled with fire and something more. Together they fought until the enemy broke and fled into the night. The kingdom was saved, the people cheering loudly from the walls. When the gates closed again, the crowd no longer shouted in fear. Instead, they cried the princess's name, and some even called out for the human with respect. The elder stepped forward, his face pale but humble. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps not all humans are as the stories say. Today you fought as one of us. The human gave a simple nod, his body tired but his spirit strong. Leora stood beside him, her hand brushing his arm softly. Her voice was clear for all to hear. He is not only one of us, he is more. He is proof that trust can break fear, that courage can come from anywhere. Remember this day, for it marks the start of change. The people bowed their heads, the sound of respect spreading like a wave. For the first time, the human felt not like a stranger, but like part of something greater. That night, as the fires of victory burned, the human and Leora stood on the balcony of the palace. The land below was quiet, the stars bright above them. Leora turned to him. You came from a world of danger, and yet you brought me safety. You were a stranger, yet now you are part of my story. He smiled faintly. And you're part of mine. I never thought I'd find trust or even friendship in a place so far from home. But here we are. Her hand rested on the railing close to his. Slowly, she let her fingers touch his, a small but powerful gesture. The journey is not over, she said softly. There will be more battles, more trials. But I will not face them alone. You will stand with me. Always, he said again, his voice steady. Together they looked out at the stars. No longer strangers from different worlds, but allies bound by trust, courage, and something that could not be broken. The story of fear had ended, and a new story had begun, one of hope, of unity, and of strength shared between a human and an alien princess. And in that moment, both knew. Whatever dangers lay ahead, they would face them side by side,